Why so many modern jobs feel meaningless, how money and work really function, what do you actually do for a living? Not your job title, not your company name, not what's written on your LinkedIn profile. What do you really do? What do you create? What do you improve? What problem is genuinely better today because you showed up to work? For some people, the answer is clear. A mechanic fixes machines that don't work, a nurse helps people heal, and teacher shapes minds. A software engineer builds tools used by millions. You can point to the outcome. You can feel the impact. But for a growing number of people, especially inside large organizations, that clarity is missing. Over the last 100 years, the nature of work has quietly transformed. Economies once centered on producing physical goods, food, tools, buildings, machines. Today, those jobs make up only a small fraction of employment. Nearly everything else falls under what we broadly call services. And when we say services, we don't just mean coffee shops or hotels. We mean administration, coordination, oversight, compliance, meetings, reports, strategy decks, internal reviews, status updates, entire layers of management designed to manage other layers of management. Some of these roles absolutely create value. They solve real problems, reduce risk, and help complex systems function. But many exist in a gray zone where output is hard to measure, impact is unclear, and success often means appearing busy rather than actually being useful. This is where the feeling creeps in. The strange sense that your work could disappear tomorrow and nothing would really change. That the emails, the meetings, the dashboards, the approvals, all of it feels like motion without progress. And this isn't because people are lazy or unskilled. It's because modern work is no longer designed purely around results. It's designed around systems, incentives, hierarchy, liability, perception, and control. Money flows through these systems in ways that reward justification, not necessarily contribution. To understand why so many jobs feel meaningless, you don't need motivation advice. You need to understand how money works, how organizations grow, and why entire roles can exist without producing anything tangible yet still get paid. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. And that's where the real conversation begins. The rise of work that exists because other work exists. Modern organizations are complex by design. As companies grow, they don't just produce more, they accumulate systems. Systems to manage people, systems to track performance, systems to reduce risk, ensure compliance, protect reputation, and signal legitimacy to the outside world. At first, these systems make sense. A growing team needs coordination, a regulated industry needs oversight, a public company needs reporting, but over time, something subtle happens. The systems begin to multiply faster than the value they were created to protect. This is where the feedback loop begins. One layer of coordination requires another layer to oversee it. A reporting process creates the need for an audit team. The audit team requires documentation. Documentation requires training. Training demands compliance checks. Compliance checks generate more reports, which need to be reviewed by someone else. Each step appears reasonable in isolation. Together, they form a self-sustaining structure. Eventually, some jobs exist not to create new value, but to maintain the appearance of order. Their output is not a product, a service, or an improvement. It is reassurance, proof that procedures were followed, that boxes were checked, that responsibility can be traced and liability assigned. This doesn't mean that people in these roles are lazy, incompetent, or unnecessary as individuals. In fact, many are highly educated, detail-oriented, and genuinely trying to do good work. The problem isn't effort, it's incentives. Modern organizations don't reward simplicity. They reward risk avoidance. They reward documentation. They reward growth in headcount as a signal of importance. A manager with 10 direct reports appears more valuable than one with 3. A department that produces reports appears more legitimate than one that quietly solves problems. So work expands to fill the space created by other work, not because anyone planned it that way, but because no one is incentivized to stop it. Eliminating unnecessary processes creates risk. Questioning the purpose of a role threatens status. Simplifying systems makes fewer people feel important, and so the structure grows. More meetings, more coordination, more oversight, more work whose primary function is to justify the existence of more work. This is how organizations become busy without being productive. And once you recognize this pattern, you begin to see it everywhere, not just in companies, but in governments, institutions, and entire economies. Understanding this isn't about blaming workers. It's about understanding how modern work really functions and why so much of it feels strangely disconnected from real impact. Why the system doesn't self-correct. In theory, inefficient work shouldn't survive. Companies that waste time and resources should lose to faster, leaner competitors. The free market is supposed to reward efficiency and punish excess. But that's not how modern organizations actually function. Efficiency is only valuable when it aligns with incentives, and for many decision makers it doesn't. Managers gain influence by controlling larger teams, not smaller ones. A department with a broad mandate appears more important than one with a narrow focus. Internally, size signals power, relevance, and job security, even when it adds little real value. At the organizational level, complexity becomes a form of protection. More processes mean more documentation. More documentation means more oversight. More oversight means more specialists. And once specialists exist, the system must be complex enough to justify their expertise. Regulation accelerates this cycle. New rules are introduced to reduce risk, but interpreting those rules requires dedicated roles. Those roles emphasize nuance, edge cases, and potential consequences, not because they're dishonest, but because their value depends on complexity remaining unsolved. Over time, reducing unnecessary work becomes dangerous. Cutting a process can look reckless. Simplifying systems can appear irresponsible. Removing roles creates political friction, even when logic supports it. So, the system stabilizes, not around efficiency, but around self-preservation. And that's why inefficient work doesn't disappear. It protects the people who control it. The cost of meaningless complexity, the real danger of low-value work is not boredom, it is waste. Waste of time, attention, and human energy that could be used to create something meaningful. In many organizations, complexity slowly replaces clarity. Meetings multiply without clear decisions. Reports are produced, formatted, and forwarded yet rarely read or acted upon. Processes are followed simply because they exist, not because they improve results. On the surface, everyone looks busy. Calendars are full, tasks are completed, systems appear to be functioning. But beneath that activity is a growing problem. People are working hard without feeling useful. When effort is disconnected from impact, motivation begins to erode. Employees stop asking whether their work matters and focus instead on avoiding mistakes, pleasing managers, or checking boxes. Productivity turns into performance, theater work done to appear effective rather than to create real value. Over time, this environment creates frustration and disengagement. Talented people feel underused. Creative thinking is replaced by compliance. Energy is spent navigating systems instead of solving problems. Meaningful work requires simplicity, not complexity. It requires clear goals, honest feedback, and the courage to remove tasks that no longer serve a purpose. When organizations focus on outcomes rather than appearances, work becomes not just efficient but fulfilling, because progress is not about doing more. It is about doing what matters. Is there a fix? The question is not whether meaningless complexity exists, it does. The real question is whether it can be fixed. At a societal level, the solution begins with redefining productivity. For too long, effort has been measured by hours logged, desks occupied, and calendars filled. But presence is not the same as progress. True productivity is about output, not optics. Completion matters more than visibility. Results matter more than routine. Organizations that understand this shift begin to change how work feels. They reduce unnecessary steps, simplify decision-making, and measure success by outcomes rather than activity. When clarity replaces complexity, people gain back time, focus, and purpose. At an individual level, awareness becomes a powerful tool. If your role includes tasks that feel unnecessary, take the time to understand why they exist. Some processes are structural, some are outdated, and some exist simply because no one has questioned them. Identify what you can minimize, automate, or eliminate. More importantly, invest in skills that create direct value. Skills that solve problems, generate results, and move work forward are always in demand. Shift your focus from looking busy to being effective. And if parts of your job feel pointless, that does not mean you are. It means the system often rewards structure as much as substance. Understanding this reality is the first step toward navigating it intelligently and choosing, with intention, how much of your time and energy you are willing to trade within it.